at Bound for Glory, we know it's going to be you and Steve Maclin and another opponent for the vacant X Division Championship. So firstly, what would it mean to you to win the title?
I've been asked before what's the most prestigious or what's the most important professional wrestling championship in any promotion to me, and it's always been the X Division Championship. So if I bring this thing home in 1 week's time, or in 9 days, or are we 9 days away now? Yeah. It would be like graduating college, which I didn't do. One of the biggest dreams come true if it were to happen. So I'm going into Bound for Glory with a lot of pressure on myself. And right now, even without having known who's the third competitor yet until tonight's episode airs, it's still a little bit, high tension going in, but this will be a dream come true.
What is it about the X Division Championship? Did you watch the X Division a lot growing up, and did it influence you?
When I wasn't the biggest TNA Impact Wrestling fan in my early teen years, but when I started to train for professional wrestling, I was only 14 years old. And, in the time, some of my favorite wrestlers were guys like Paul London, Rey Mysterio, Brian Kendrick, smaller guys. And they were pretty far and few between inside of WWE at the time. And it seemed like that's kind of what Impact built their pillars around, or the so I can particularly point out when I fell in love with the X Division. I was sitting at home. My best friend, who was my training partner, lived 2 houses down. He calls me, he goes, "Dude, you got to get down here. This dude on TNA looks just like you." And at the time, I used to wear a mohawk with designs. And so I run in, and Amazing Red's on TV doing a backstage interview with Don West right next to him. And I'm just like, oh, snap, that dude's small. There's no way. And then he wrestled Kurt Angle. Mm-hmm. And he moved faster and smoother and kicked quicker than anyone I'd ever seen before. And I was immediately enthralled, and I just honed in and paid attention and started YouTubing and researching everything X Division from there on out. And Impact was always the place I'd wanted to end up when I had found that love for the X Division style wrestling. Mm-hmm. And so to be here now is one of the most full circle things in the world. I got to go to my first TNA Impact show ever when I was 17 years old, and Don West was walking around the audience, and I don't know why. I don't know if he was trying to find a restroom or what, if he was lost, just trying to get popcorn. But at the time, I had edited a 1 minute length highlight video. I had never made or edited a video in my life, but I threw this thing together because I knew I was going to the show, and I had a meet and greet pass. So I was going to do anything I could to get someone to watch this video, and that did not happen during the meet and greet. But during intermission, when we're all just walking around, I ran up to Don West. I was like, "Oh my God, Don West, you were Amazing Red's manager. Oh man, can I show you this?" And yeah. He took 60 seconds to watch a 17-year-old kid's super crappy YouTube edited highlight video. And I remember ending the conversation with saying, "I know I'm too small and I know I'm really young." And he cut me off and he goes, "Kid, that's why we have the X Division." And from that moment, every time I wanted to quit, I listened to that or replayed that in my head, or where I got lost or didn't know where I was headed or felt like I was moving in any direction but where I wanted to. I had to hold on to that. So the X Division means as much to me as wrestling as an entirety. Mm-hmm. So this is my home.
You mentioned there about TNA Impact really like building on the X Division as the pillars early on. Now in 2021, there's so much going on in Impact. Where do you think the place of the X Division is, and how important it still is within the company?
I feel like it's one of the most essential attributes to Impact Wrestling, because as you see, it just it literally was the catalyst to Josh Alexander becoming the #1 contender, challenging for our biggest pay-per-views main event this year. Like without the X Division being what it is, or offering what it does, or giving opportunities that it has, this card might be stacked differently. We wouldn't have a Josh Alexander versus Christian Cage, which I am super excited to watch. I remember when Austin Aries turned on option C, that being one of the most mind-blowing and pivotal moments in wrestling history to me, because it's like, wow, this can be whatever you want it to be. This could be a means to something else, or it could be whatever, your golden egg. It's my golden egg. I don't look at the X Division as a means to become a world champ. The X Division is my world championship. I think it skyrocketed Josh. I think it gave Josh the opportunity to show the world, Impact Wrestling, AEW, WWE, NXT, anyone inside of the wrestling world, what we offer and what we're about. Our X Division made a world champion to be. I think that's very cool.
Yeah, no, absolutely. You were saying there about how you felt at 17 being smaller, and so throughout your training and your career up until now, how much have you seen that become a non-factor with what we see today with smaller guys in bigger spots in Impact and other companies as well?
I love that it's so much of a non-factor that I get to watch one of my friends, Marco, stunt on AEW Dynamite. He's the smallest human beings, shortest guys I've ever met, with one of the biggest hearts ever, and more fight and like metaphorical heart than half the guys that ever step between those ropes. That's amazing, because that's the guy that had a dream that he shouldn't be disqualified from achieving just because he doesn't reach a height requirement or a weight limit. That's the biggest amount of trash I've ever heard. I hate the stigma about you have to fit a build or be a size or have this less amount of tattoos or this many more. Like there's no mold for this. And anyone that contributes to that statement, I have all the love and support for inside of wrestling. So I still look at myself like one of the smaller guys, but I'm not the smallest. And the fact that it can be smaller than me is awesome, because then it gives me a chance to look like Braun Strowman or something. You know what I mean? So sweet.
So one of the guys you could be in the ring with competing for the title is El Phantasmo, and he's from New Japan. So what have you seen the New Japan guys that we've seen in Impact, like Jay White and Juice Robinson and Dave Finlay, add to Impact?
A sense of what is going to happen next. It's funny to bring up El Phantasmo. He was actually the first gentleman that I got to team with my first time visiting the UK. We teamed up against Dez and Zach, of all people, my fellow Rascalz, and he's one of the best performers I think I've ever shared a ring with. So if he is the third pick, knowing what it takes to be in a New Japan Pro Wrestling locker room, I think that adds even more pressure to this match, because I think the locker room of New Japan is one of the most respected and most talented and most diverse locker rooms that exist in pro wrestling today, and it's ever evolving. So I think there's a lot of main event matches on this card next week, but I mean, granted, there can only be one main event. I think every match is a main event feel to it. So I think next Saturday is going to be super awesome. New Japan people over. Give us all let's stir this pot. Let's make some wrestling gumbo.
Well, with that pot stirring and like forbidden door opening, how have you kind of seen things change over the past couple of months, like in the locker room or with the excitement among you guys on the roster?
You never know what's going to happen when you show up for work. I mean, already you never know, but when this first all started, I think some of the first faces we've seen in the locker room were Private Party and Matt Hardy. And I remember walking in that weekend like, what happened? It was very surprising. And, as the wheels keep turning, more surprises keep happening, and it just keeps everyone on their toes. And it's actually really cool, because as everyone knows, I'm sure it's no secret, wrestlers, like, I have friends that are in AEW, just like I have best friends that are in NXT, and kind of not knowing when you might run into one of your old friends you haven't worked with or seen in a long time, that's something that makes going to work really cool too. It's like going to school after your buddy's been sick for a long time. You don't know which day he's popping back up or she is popping back up. So that's cool. It adds a bit of excitement and another sense of unpredictability, like, ooh, what's going to happen today? Did catering change too?
Is there a buddy or maybe someone you've never met before from AEW you'd most like to see walk through the door?
Jungle Boy.
Jungle Boy. Yeah. That would be really, really good.
Probably AEW performer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Him or Ray Phoenix is one of my great friends. We have gotten to share the ring a few times on the independents here in the States, and every time I ever have, I always come out a better wrestler. I've shared a ring with Jungle Boy one time for PWG in LA, and that was one of my favorite independent matches I've ever had. And we walk out of it great friends. So if I ever seen him walk into an Impact locker room, I might drop my jaw quicker than my food in my hand or something like that. It'd be a very nice surprise.
So you'll be in Las Vegas for Bound for Glory. What's it going to be like getting out of Nashville?
It'll be a breath of fresh air. Nothing wrong with Nashville. If I had one complaint, it seems like delivering food in that city is next level trigonometry, but you know, whatever. The fans there are great. I'm really excited to return to Las Vegas, though, just to spread the love. Like, I mean, granted, we stayed in Nashville for over a year with no fans. The first 2 tapings back with fans, you know, we gave it to Nashville, but I'm ready to start spreading some of that out and going back to Vegas or New York or Dallas, you know, some of the places that Impact would frequent. And it feels good to start getting those wheels turning now, too.
What was it like for you without fans, and how did you have to adjust anything as a performer?
That didn't tell you enough right there. Honestly, it wasn't the worst thing in the world. I feel like for anyone that's ever worked enough independent promotions or gone to a show where there was no draw, there was 15 people, crowd just didn't happen that night, or maybe someone didn't promote. I mean, you see thousands on the indies, you see hundreds on the indies, and sometimes you see tens on the indies. And I think the smallest crowd I ever performed in front of was 8 people, and some of them were staff. So with that being said, you always perform to your highest level because there's obviously a camera rolling, and there's someone on the other side of that camera that's still going to be invested regardless of the ambiance or lack thereof, or crowd or lack thereof. So you have to do it for them. And I've done that for long enough on the independents that I don't think it was the hardest thing in the world to go in front of an empty arena with production and, you know, feed it to the people at home. I can assume that some people that maybe have less independent experience, or someone that skyrocketed to TV or something like that, how it could be uncomfortable for them. I 100% can get that. But for myself, I don't feel like it was something that was too hard to navigate. If anything, the biggest effect it had on me was a lack of adrenaline, because having a live crowd and seeing faces react to what you're doing and people showing sympathy or getting, you know, raging on with you, that does a lot. And I think that's the only difference it ever really made for me. That, and I just genuinely missed people.
I wanted to ask you what it was like to team with Melina recently, because she's very fun.
That was super fun. That's something I never thought I'd ever do. I was a big Eminem fan growing up. Told me I was going to do it. I was like, what? I had a lot of fun doing it, though, from filming the backstage stuff to actually having the matches with her. Melina was such a professional to work with, and one of the sweetest human beings or wrestlers that I've ever gotten to work with. And if I ever got to do it again, I would be just as excited all over again.
Do you know why you were picked as the guy?
I don't know. I'd like to think it's because I'm a young heartthrob or somewhere along those lines, but I have no idea. I got my like list of matches for the weekend, and I was like, what? And yeah, so it was a huge surprise to me that was a thing.
And early in the year, you had a great match with Sami Callihan. So what was it like putting together a last man standing match with someone as violent and as experienced in violence as Sami?
Sami has one of the most creative, on-the-fly minds for professional wrestling that I've ever gotten to work with. And I'm actually very close with Sami. Sami helped train me. Sami was one of the most instrumental parts in me becoming a part of the Impact Wrestling roster. Sami has me as a regular for his independent promotion, the Wrestling Revolver, which is one of my favorite places to frequent. And every time I have an opportunity to work with Sami, I get a special bit of excitement because I get to wrestle family, which is something that, you know, not everyone has the luxury of getting to do that. Not everyone finds family inside of professional wrestling. And that always makes me happy, but I always know ahead of time, like I said, I'm going to come out of this a better wrestler, whether it happens in the middle of the match, the middle, or the end of it, or somewhere on the floor on the outside, somewhere a light bulb goes off in my head and I learned something I didn't know before, and I gained a bit of confidence. And Sami is just actually one of the sweetest men alive, even though he thumbs up, thumbs down, and drools and spits everywhere. He's actually, he means a lot to me. So the fact that that was the first program I had coming back to Impact in a time where I kind of felt more uncomfortable inside of pro wrestling than I probably ever have because of everything that was circulating. It was probably a time where I wanted to step away more than I ever had. And Sami was there every step of the way to make sure that I didn't. So I owe him more than fans will know prior to hearing this. So.
Well, like you said there about things that were going on, like with the now MSK leaving and you being on your own, how do you feel like you maybe entered and left the feud with Sami differently, both in yourself and in the eyes of the fans?
I felt like heading into it, I was going through a what some may call an identity crisis. I didn't know who I was. I didn't know how I felt about who I was. I didn't know how I wanted to portray the person I was walking out on camera as and coming out on the other side of it. Now I feel like I'm more grounded than I have ever been. I feel like I'm the best professional wrestler I've ever been, and I'm closer to being the professional wrestler I want to be, like closer than I've ever been. So I'm a firm believer that everything happens for a reason, and you can never tell from a single moment if something is like a product of misfortune or good fortune, and all you can do is just take it for face value and try to control the things that are within your control. And I feel like everyone's played their cards well. MSK are champions. I'm a week away from my first big marquee Bound for Glory match, or not my first. Last year I wrestled for the X Division Championship too, but I feel like there's just something different about this year. And I mean, we have fans back. Last year we did Bound for Glory in front of empty arenas. So I feel like there's a lot of full circle things happening right now, and I don't question them. I just kind of ride the wave as it comes, whether it goes up or down.
And finally, if you become X Division champion, then what would you like? How would you envision your reign, as far as like matches and what you'd want to bring to the championship that has such a great lineage?
What I'd love more than anything is to, I mean, this isn't as much as in my control as I would like it to be, but when I was a big fan of the X Division as a child who was just getting, you know, hip to things, one of my aspects about the X Division was getting introduced to professional wrestlers that didn't have an Impact contract, and that you would see some guy off the indies that you had no idea about, but he gets his stuff in and he gets to show his stuff. And it was always a X Division match or an X Division championship match. And what I would love more than anything is to give opportunity to unrecognized high-performing talent that doesn't have a contract and give the fans fresh faces and fresh matches and high-flying action and unpredictability like we had before. I mean, this is no knock towards Impact, but I feel like the Impact or the X Division is smaller than it's ever been. And that's not the field I want to run on. I want as much competition and as many best matches as I can have in my catalog as the X Division champion if it were to happen. So if I get voted class president, I want to challenge all students of all schools, private or public, to come challenge. If I could do anything, that would be it.